Yo, better on the mic, it's the Krewe NFC, the Roundtable where the real heads be. Talking NFL, the game we adore, from the touchdowns to the legends and so much more. That booking guy, he's got the stats on lock, dropping knowledge on the field, watching every block. Back and bleeding green, cheering loud and proud. In the sea of cheese, as he's standing out the crowd. I can't hear with the looks and the smarts, breaking down the plays, and he does it with heart. And the stout, solid like the line. His takes are heavy, his vision's divine. Week by week, we break the game down. From every big play to every new crown. Offense, defense, we cover it all. From the springtime drafts to the winner's last call. It's not just a podcast, it's a fan's lifeline. Connecting every moment from the vines to the side.
Good morning, gentlemen. NFL Roundtable, divisional round of the playoffs. How's everybody doing?
Okay. Here. Present.
Oh, as long as you're more present than the Niners were last night.
Oh.
That was quite possibly one of the worst showings they've had. I mean, that team has overcame so many injuries, and last night it looks like it all just came to the wall.
They got their rear ends handed to them thusly. I think it's because they're the same type of team that's like similar to on par to like some of the easier teams, Tampa Bay, for example, Green Bay, for example, Dallas, for example.
but in all honesty, you look at that game last night. If Seattle plays like that, I don't think anybody's beating them. They started the game off with that kick return, and that seriously just set the entire tone for the game. No, there was no coming up off the mat for that. I mean, San Francisco was pulling a double reverse screen pass for a yard. I mean, that was honestly one of the best defense performances I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, they were aggressive. They were going after that ball. They were going after the quarterback. Yeah, it was impressive. It's going to be a good victory for the Bears next week.
You know, I hope it goes well for the Bears if they pull it off this week. But I honestly, if Seattle, I think if you're any fan other than a Seattle Seahawks fan, you are hoping and praying Seattle put it all on the line last night and are completely spent. Like they have emptied everything from the bank account and they have nothing left to go on.
Yeah, I mean, we can go back a couple weeks and look at what the Bears did to San Francisco and how the Bears should have pulled that game out in San Fran, the way it was a shootout. But I don't know whether or not if San Francisco's defense truly was anything worth great, And then on top of that, you flip it around to the offensive side. I mean, maybe San Francisco feasted on weaker defenses, but I think a lot of people have said all year round, Seattle's got a top tier defense. And I think last night, combination of just all three phases all coming together and they looked pretty damn flawless. And on top of that, you got that 12th man up in Seattle. I mean, once that kick return happened right at the beginning of the game, I mean, that sent the 12th man into a frenzy. And at that moment, I was already thinking, oh, this is going to be tough. So,
well, I mean, last time I saw a kick return for a touchdown in that high profile game was when the Bears shit the bed. And that's what I was waiting for. And
your face.
I'm 100% serious. I was waiting for the fall off. I felt like, okay, Seattle came out, made this great play on special teams. Their offense has yet to touch the field. They're up 7-0. They just sit back and relax and get it taken advantage of by the 49ers defense, who hasn't been bad all season, like you just said. Were they playing bad teams? Was it, just circumstance that they looked so well going so far into the season? But they couldn't do anything right last night. Seattle pretty much. Go ahead, Andy.
You could tell that there wasn't going to be necessarily a letdown per se when the very next series, it was virtually 3-0. You had a near pick six. You had a pass deflection, a near pick six. That's when you had that double option, 4th and 1 or whatever the case is, you could see that there was going to be some serious defensive going on Seattle's side, that aggressiveness. And then you actually couple that with the aggressiveness of their offensive line, especially early on. Yeah. And you could tell there wasn't going to be necessarily a letdown. But you're right. There is a possibility of them actually spending it all right then and there. Although you think about it, I mean, didn't they have that extra week off because they were number 1 seed, blah blah blah, home field advantage throughout. So,
but how many times have we looked at that number 1 seed come out of that bye and be flat, be complete rust, be unable to do anything on offense or defense? That special teams play came out, they set the tone. Their defense came out and responded. Then their offense just marched down the field like it was cutting through butter.
Oh yeah, their game was ridiculous last night.
Right, and I think if you have that crowd noise and stuff like that getting you amped up and stuff, I think that's a huge thing. It's like I said. I think if anything, and what makes it actually a huge advantage for them, everything is actually West Coast. So even if you do make it to the big game, you're going back out to the West Coast. And if you think about it, Seattle, Santa Clara, it's just on the road. So they're very familiar with that area. You might as well call that a backyard home game kind of a deal. So whoever the AFC team might be, who are going to be facing the Bears in the Super Bowl, it's going to be a problem for
them. Andy, I love the optimism. I really do. Not that we cover much AFC, but how about the Denver Broncos? How can you be on such a mile high, so to speak, pun intended, and then get kicked square in the jaw? I mean, that was Bo Nix getting hurt, second to last play of the game. He probably threw, honest to God, his best pass of the night after he broke his ankle. But surgery necessary. I mean,
what makes that kind of interesting is some of the calls, some of the penalties and stuff like that. There was a couple that I thought were a little bit suspect, and there were a few during overtime. I understand that pass interference 100%. But in that particular case, would you want to have that to just let it play, or would you want to actually give the other team a chance to actually win in the playoffs? If it was regular season, that'd be different. But if you have a pass interference call that could be somewhat suspect, whatever the case is, are you going to let that play, or are you going to let that ride in the playoffs?
I have two stances on this, and they both face each other. So they contradict one another, but I'm going to give you my first stance on this, okay? You call the play, you call the play, you call the play. If you're calling it like it is in the first quarter, you call it the same way in the fourth quarter. No matter what time is on the clock, pass interference should be pass interference, cut and dry. However, the NFL really needs to look into this. These officials are controlling tempo, pace, and score of game by throwing. There were 2 flags that were picked up. Oh, there was no flag. No explanation what they thought the flag was. No, I mean, not that they owe the fans that. You would think they would. But not that they owe the fans that. But they at least owe the coaches that say, hey, we threw the flag for this after conversation. We ruled no flag. But you have multiple flags shown that aren't actually called. You have a pass interference. That first pass interference wasn't as egregious. He did that. There was some hand jousting, but it wasn't as bad as I thought this last pass interference was. The last pass interference was the defensive back trying to save face and not give up a touchdown. That's what that was. He pulled him down and pulled his arm down. Get it. Pass interference there. But that second to last pass interference, I don't know. I hate being the guy that's like, the NFL is scripted, because I'm not. But these officials are having too heavy an impact on games, especially when it all comes down at the end.
When you add on to this, and I know, Mike, you and I talked about it briefly, like, was it an interception?
Go ahead, Andy. Let me ask you that. Was that an interception?
No.
Ooh.
I don't know. Probably. I didn't see it. Which one?
Okay, so Denver Broncos, Buffalo Bills. Bills receiver has contact with the ball.
I did see it.
Has possession of the ball. When he has possession of the ball, the defensive back's arm is between the ball and the receiver. The NFL rules state that you must complete the catch all the way through contact with the ground. When that receiver hit the ground, that ball jostles. Once that ball jostles and the defensive back's arm is between the receiver and the ball, there's no control. The defensive back rolls, has possession of the ball. The wide receiver makes contact with the defensive back. Therefore, the defensive back is down by contact.
Oh my God, that last 35, 40 seconds was absolutely painful. Absolutely painful. Yes, I did see it, as a matter of fact. And so now that I have the next 35 to 45 seconds, no, you're absolutely right in the fact that, it's supposed to be all the way down to the ground. It's kind of like baseball. The tie goes to the runner kind of a thing. So if anything, if you have a 50% possession on defense as well, it would actually go to the offensive player. That's perfectly fine. So as such, when he hit the ground and the ball was actually wrenched from him right there, you could make a case either way. Like, look, he's down by contact because the ball is actually still in his possession. But then you can also say the same thing about the defensive player. You know what? The ground, he wasn't able to control all the way to the ground. The defensive back actually was able to wrestle away from him, and he's the one who had possession all the way through to the ground. So it's an interesting little scenario right there, and it just goes to show how it doesn't necessarily matter what's everything changes. It always stays the same. There's always at least something new, some new wrinkle that they have to kind of sort of bring into account. So, and that's what makes it kind of interesting. But I would think personally it was an interception. But,
agreed. And let's tie this all in together. And, we're talking about how games are being called differently at certain points of the game. Like I remember Super Bowls where the first 3 quarters, they're not calling anything. And in the fourth quarter, they're calling everything. It's like, really? Now you're going to start calling stuff? This is a way out there theory. And I know we always say NFL scripted. But with all this stuff with the sports betting that's going down and people tanking, are the refs involved in this now too?
I honestly, this is terrible for me to say this, but I honestly think that there is some officiating that's being done on the slide with, let's say, Vegas hands running through them or mafia hands running through, whatever you want to call it. There's money exchanging somewhere. You can't tell me. Look back at NFL seasons and tell me how many one-possession games you've had, and then look at this season. Look how tight these games are. Look at the Vegas money line compared to the final score. Look at the underdog compared to the betting. I mean, it's unbelievable. And I'm definitely not saying the NFL is scripted. I didn't play in the NFL, but I played football for a long time, and I know how hard and how intricate every individual step of the game is. I know how hard it is to get that 1 inch. However, these officials are changing outcomes of games, and you're not going to convince me that they're not.
So how would you explain San Francisco getting shellacked?
San Francisco woke up in the morning and got their ass.
I mean, what was it over under 40, 47, 48 points? Didn't matter how you got there.
I get, and it was terrible. It was a hard watch. And like a friend of ours, friend of the show, former host on the show, is a huge Niner fan. And he usually is chirping and, he's in the chat talking crap. And all he said was, "This is ridiculous." That was all we got the entire night. So, it was just bad. The injuries, I honestly think, you lose Fred Warner, you lose Kittle, you lose the heart and soul that, 49ers.
Well, even Christian McCaffrey, honestly, I don't think he was playing healthy for about the last quarter of the year, and it kind of showed.
Yeah.
He just doesn't have that burst. So.
They were so good. The coach is so good. Bat. And it's funny too because speaking of, flying in the face of mediocrity, I see Green Bay has extended Matt LaFleur. Really? Really?
We can get into the coaching carousel. That's a good segue. We can go to the game last. That works for me. Give you some time to gather some thoughts on how poorly the Bears will play tonight. But let's
and still win. You're absolutely right.
let's get into this coaching carousel.
Hold on. I'll just say this: you have history and destiny on your side. You have the 40th anniversary of that other Super Bowl victory. It's against the same team, same type of weather. If it was 24-0, I wouldn't be surprised. So there's just all kinds of stuff. Bring back Eric Dickerson. We'll stop him again too.
All right, let's get into this coaching carousel. Falcons get their offensive-minded head coach in Stefanski, pulling a big change from Raheem Morris. You have a two-time coach of the year going to Atlanta, and you have John Harbaugh going to the New York Giants. LaFleur is supposedly getting, I read 5-year extension. I don't know how true that is. Brian, can you comment on that? Do you know anything further on that?
I've seen 3-year extension. I've seen 5-year extension. I don't know exactly. I know that they aren't going to release anything until the Brian Gutekunst and the VP they're all tying them in together with contract extensions. They're going to lock them in. My theory is on this whole thing is that I think they get locked in for as long as Micah Parsons' contract is, because basically they sold their soul to get Micah Parsons. And if this doesn't work, then that'll be the eventual house cleaning. You get rid of player, you get rid of coaches, you get rid of GM.
So depending on if it's actually a 3 or 5 year, that's about 3 to 5 years. Too long.
We talked about this last week, and I gave it some thought. Mike was right when he said, if you fire him, who's better? That's the point. Is there really that kind of a candidate out there that can go and take whatever their player personnel is and make them better?
You have Matt Eberflus.
Oh, Jesus, here we go.
There's a strong possibility that he might be done playing, and if that case, he should just immediately get to the head coaching spot. Fellow by the name of Kyle Trask. No, there were several coaches that actually might fit a little bit better, but when you get the scheme stays the same, but the players change. Now that's actually been a part of their strength, even with Aaron, A hole anyway, but. That's always been a strength with them because, especially if you have your quarterback as your steadfast, okay? And then everybody else can change around him because he already knows everything. So then you're going to be able to actually show the wide receivers and running back the things, okay, no, do this. Fine. When it gets to that point, though, unfortunately, when sometimes, like Tomlin, for example, things were becoming a little bit too stale. Things were just becoming, we talked about it like Band-Aid fix as opposed to an actual, surgical procedure type of deal. If by chance they were to actually switch out a different coach, whatever the case is, you're right. He probably would not have been the long-term coach, but he probably would have been, a year or two, kind of like an Eberflus, kind of like, a Matt Nagy, to where you have a stopgap until you get to the next bigger, better thing. And that's all fine and dandy. But in this particular case, I don't necessarily see Matt LaFleur being, again, your long-term coach like a Tomlin. He's been that way for several years. But you see how things have gotten stagnant. You don't necessarily have, that thing, that it factor that I had when you had Aaron. So with that, I can definitely see them going a different direction. But in this particular case, I can honestly see them sticking with LaFleur. But
right, and I'm going back on. I'm looking at Rob Domofsky, who's the beat writer for ESPN for the Green Bay Packers. All it says is he's signed a multi-year contract extension that a source has said is, quote, not a prove-it deal, but a real commitment. So that makes me think that's probably in the neighborhood of 5 years.
Yeah, I would think so. Which I'm not sure I agree with, especially with a coach like Tomlin sitting on the sideline this season. But I'm not saying Tomlin would go to Green Bay and change the world. I think Tomlin walked into an ideal circumstance in Pittsburgh. However, so we do have coaching vacancies still open in Tennessee, Cleveland, Vegas, Baltimore, Arizona, and Miami. What on this list do you feel is the best opportunity?
If anything, I would probably say Vegas would be one of the better ones And I'll tell you why. Not only are they going to get like one of the top picks, if not the top pick in the draft, you have an owner who's just as insane as the original owner was, who's looking to possibly throw money at whatever the case is in order to be able to bring home a championship. I just think you have a better circumstance there, not the personnel. You have one defensive player who's unfortunately just had surgery, that could turn things around for you, but that might be one of the better opportunities out there, just simply because you have the makings of something good.
So I agree with you, Andy, but my reasoning is completely different. Right? You go into Baltimore, you're set with high expectations. Right? You already have your quarterback in place. You're not moving away from Lamar Jackson, right? So that's in place. You already have the mindset of you're in a conference or a division that is winnable. You were close already. You should be up towards the top of that. So I take that out of the equation because you're not going to be able to build your program there. You're not going to have enough time to build your program there. But I look at Las Vegas, right? You have the first pick of the draft. You have Max Crosby, who, in my opinion, you trade. You get as much draft capital as you can for Max Crosby, and you go into that Raiders office like John Gruden did, and you lay out a 10-year plan. You tell them, this is going to be a 10-year rebuild. You're going to have to stick with me. We're going to have our bumps and bruises. We're going to we'll come into the playoffs by year 4, year 5. We'll be in the Super Bowl by year 10. But you trade off Max Crosby and you get those picks. You get that young insertion of blood into your program, and you build it how you want it. You build it how you feel you can be successful. The Raiders have proven they're willing to give that kind of money out, and they're willing to pay their offensive, defensive coordinators. So I think you're in a good position with Las Vegas.
Real quick, now you mentioned Baltimore, so let me ask you this: with Lamar Jackson getting a little bit older, not necessarily chronologically, but football wise, his running days might be numbered per se. He might be one bump away from being like, I'm done running. Do you see a Lamar Jackson actually being able to beat you with his arm?
Yeah, he did it in college. He's done it in the pros. He's a 2-time MVP. The problem Baltimore ran into was the fact that their defense didn't perform like it had in the past. They were in games, but they weren't within striking distance when it mattered. I really think that they moved on from Harbaugh because they wanted new blood, new life into that locker room. But the expectations will still be the same, and I think that's what's really going to pigeonhole a coach that walks into there. I think they're going to need an offensive-minded head coach. But yeah, so like I said, I think Vegas is a better job out there. But if you look, the NFC is going to have two new coaches. Two new coaches. They're both coming from the AFC. Now, is the AFC trying to say it's easier to win in the NFC? Are they trying to say they can make a bigger impact in the NFC because of how congested the NFC is?
Well, my theory on that is actually very simple. You have a lot of offense coming through the AFC, and you have some offense, of course, coming through the NFC, sure. But what's the North, the NFC North? What's it been known as? Black and blue. And so that's why, I think they figure as though that, if I'm going to bring my offense and score, 25, 30 points a game, but now all of a sudden have a defense, you're going to be able to actually do, you might be able to hoist up that trophy at the end of the season. But that's, I think, the only major reason, because everything is kind of sort of interchangeable. And, with coaches and with the fact that it's all paid, I don't really necessarily think there's any sort of a thing, AFC versus NFC thing. Now, if they were to say something like, "I got hired by the Buccaneers, I can win 2 games and go to the playoffs."
Well, hey, Stefanski. Stefanski goes to the NFC South, a team that had a 7-9 record, tied with the team that had a 7-9 record, tied with the team that was the division champion with a 7-9 record. I mean, that's anyway. Before we got off
pathetic.
Wait, let me go before we get off topic. Brian, what coaching vacancy do you feel is the most appealing or better option?
You see, I like how you guys are thinking with the Raiders, just because of the fact of you got draft capital, you do have, young talent. If you trade Crosby, you can get a lot back for him and you could rebuild, but it's going to take a special coach to lay out that kind of plan. And, when you guys are talking, I was thinking, well, Tomlin, what about Tomlin? Tomlin's a guy that can go and set the culture, get his own people in there. But there's a problem with that. Tomlin's under control for the Steelers for 2 years. You would have to trade Mike Tomlin to the Las Vegas Raiders for him to be a head coach. That's not going to happen, guys. So
you could always trade Max Crosby to the Steelers for Mike Tomlin.
that is true. And
who would go first? Who would say no first? If I'm Pittsburgh, you're going to give me Max Crosby? You're going to take the coach that I'm paying to not coach? Happy trails.
right.
Good luck with
Can
that.
you imagine the Pittsburgh Steelers with Watt and Crosby? Come on.
Yeah. But I'm actually looking. I'm kind of looking at Atlanta with how they did their thing, and they got the right coach. That's the one that I liked. But now since that's over with, out of everybody else, I mean, I could say the Ravens, but I just don't know. To be perfectly honest with you, with how they ended up last year, can you really go into that situation and immediately win with what they have present?
So, let me ask you this. This gives you a chance to expand upon two things, really. Let's just say that the Packers decided not to actually extend Layflower and let him go. Where would you want to see him go, and who would you want to see come in?
Hell, you're going to hell not.
Oh my God! Well, I think LaFleur would have gotten a head coaching job easily somewhere, and it actually there were rumors that if LaFleur did hit the market, Atlanta was his spot because that's where he grew up on his coaching tree. He would have went to Atlanta.
And I thought we could cram it up there for a yard and
Cram it up your cram hole, Floor.
But in terms of if they let LaFleur go, I think they would start with. I think Hafley would have been probably your first choice since he's already in the organization. But then you're going to a defensive coach. With that being said, they would probably get a good offensive coordinator in there to complement Hafley as a head coach. Which the big name there, in my opinion, would be Mike McDaniel. I think that would be a good fit.
Yeah.
You could see possibly McDaniel being another head coach and not just an offensive coordinator somewhere.
I think he could be a head coach, but the problem is, does he truly want to be a head coach for a team like the Arizona Cardinals where you've got a big question mark at quarterback? Do you want to be a head coach for the Cleveland Browns has no quarterback or whatever? I think if there was anything, and I'm kind of looking at the list to see who's been interviewed and everything, Baltimore has completed an interview with Mike McDaniel, and they have not done any list. There is no list yet of second interviews being done with any of these guys yet. So I think that's up in the air. And I think, especially with these playoff teams, because I'm seeing names like the offensive coordinator for the Seahawks is getting head coaching interviews, and Robert Saleh is getting head coach interviews. Now that he's gone, you're going to start seeing his name out there more. I think with these playoff teams, I think there's a lot that's going to have to settle with, especially with the playoffs going on, because I don't think any big decisions are going to be made probably with the rest of these teams until at least closer to the Super Bowl or after the Super Bowl, I think. So
a couple names to keep an eye on before we get off this topic. You got McCarthy still out there, expressed interest in being a coach in this league again. John Gruden, who's also expressed interest being a head coach in this league again. Those are two names we haven't heard a lot about. They are on the list. I'm sure they are on a lot of these coaches or a lot of these teams' list for head coaches. The Ravens have interviewed Chris Shula, though. They have completed an interview with Chris Shula for their head coaching vacancy. In Miami, Hafley is considered to be the candidate for the Miami Dolphins.
Well, I don't know. Hafley's interviewing with the Titans again today, and that was just reported. And I'm wondering if this is going to be the stranglehold ploy, say we're not letting you leave until you get hired.
Yeah, they also have set up a second with Matt Nagy as well. So.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing here is what I'm seeing is like the only one that I saw Mike McCarthy interview for was the Titans job.
Yeah.
Now that Pittsburgh is open, he's from Pennsylvania. I think you might see that migration to Pittsburgh might get Aaron Rodgers one more year.
Yeah,
wouldn't that be a reunion?
After watching Aaron Rodgers' last few games, do you think there is one more year in that body?
All the players want him back. I mean, I read an article about it. They want him back.
There's no reason to move on from him. He's matured a lot since he was the jerk in Green Bay, according to all reports. He's great in the locker room. Most wide receivers love working with him. How many wide receivers have you heard leave Green Bay then complain about Aaron Rodgers? 4.
Well, Devontae Adams actually rejoined him with the Jets. And I mean, that was and Devontae's always talked highly about him. So it's not.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but you throw him the ball and you get him paid and stuff like that. Of course he's going to be a big fan.
That's why we keep you around, Andy.
Pretty much. Because with you two, yeah. You need to have one team that's in the playoffs.
Speaking of that one team in the playoffs, there's a game tonight, so we'll get into that.
Welcome to the bare minimum with your host, Candy Andy. Walter, Ditka, Peyton, Dent, Butkus, Zipman, Khalil, Fridge, Richard, Jim, Lovey, Sires, Cutler, Feuds, the Bears. The Bears. The
Bears versus the Los Angeles. It doesn't matter. Rams. We were talking about earlier how you actually have a couple of things going on. Not only you have history going on, you've got destiny going on. You have a coach that's has had his players fighting the whole thing. So anyway, well, that's why the children are out of the room right now. The non-playoff children are out of the room right now.
Big things are going on in Illinois for the Indiana Bears, Andy. What's going on, my friend?
I was trying to get to that, and then you guys decided to pop back in. So I'm gonna need you to zip his man.
We'll bother him with that question. Let him ramble for a few. Then we'll talk some intelligent stuff. Did you get your little undies and a little bunch right there? You had to switch the areas around here, so you're back on the upper left. That's why you're a Buccaneers fan. So, injury-wise, you got some things going on. You got DJ Moore, who's cleared to play. CJ Gardner-Johnson, he's actually good to go. Roma Dunze is, of course, questionable. Of course, he has interesting little things with his foot. Jalen Reeves-Maybin, Who? Nick McLeod, And then, of course, you have TJ Edwards, and Ozzie Trapillo, who, unfortunately, season-ending injuries. So that's actually the negatives for the Bears because, of course, TJ Edwards was having a good year. Ozzie on the offensive line was having a fantastic year. But unfortunately, it's unfortunate, but they were thinking about taking Joe Funny and actually shifting him over to left, which would be a good thing because he's a good all-around offensive lineman. But it's also a kind of a negative to the point where you're taking him out of his strong position in order to be able to kind of fill a gap when Benedict, number 76, I think it was 78, came in and actually filled in admirably for Trapillo. So LA doesn't matter. Let's see. You have a couple of things for road to victory, and this is where it's going to get kind of interesting because the Rams potentially could have offensive type of an offense.
but they have that opportunity to be able to score a decent amount of points. The good thing about that is the Bears these days can potentially also score a bunch of points. Line of scrimmage is going to be a huge thing for the Bears with their somewhat jumbled offensive line to a point. If they can actually establish that run, that's going to be a major thing, especially for LA coming in. The weather, the temperature is going to be a little bit for them to kind of sort of get acclimated to. They, of course, probably will, but then you have to go in at halftime, get nice and warm, and then you have to come back out and do it all over again. So you have that opportunity. And I understand that the Rams are kind of complaining about the fact that, with the Bears having to play a Saturday game last week and a Sunday game this week, they got an extra day of rest. OMG. But you have Matthew Stafford, who, of course, is familiar with the Bears. He hasn't had the greatest of success statistically against, the Bears or at least cold weather teams. So I think if the Bears have that opportunity to be able to actually get to him once or twice, God forbid, the Bears definitely need a pass rusher. You give him kind of the happy feet. You get maybe one or two, turnovers, whatever the case is. The Bears could conceivably win 24-0. Bam.
Yeah. Anyway, so let's get some real analytics or real conversation going on this game. We'll get some real football knowledge besides Andy's delusional peyote, whatever enhanced stream he's got going on here. You got LA coming into sub-zero temperatures.
I mentioned that.
And a quarterback that has a injured thumb on his throwing hand. How big impact do you think this plays in today's game?
None.
I think it affects the kicking game more than anything. I think you might see a lot more fourth downs going for in this game because especially if you've got the wins with, they say, 15-25 at kickoff, you've got sub-zero temperatures. It's hard to kick the ball in that cold, let alone with the swirling winds at Soldier Field. I think this is going to be an interesting thing to where look at fourth down conversion rates in this. I mean, if you are unsure about kicking a 35-yard, 40-yard field goal, you're going to be seeing teams going for it at 4th and 5, 4th and 8, because while they may be giving up field position, they're going to bank on, well, they could get 25 yards on the next possession, but they're still going to be out of field goal range because the kicking game is going to be so damn unsure. So, in my opinion, I think you take the kicking game out, and it's going to be all about third down conversion, fourth down conversions in this game. I mean, to be honest with you, everybody's saying, oh, this is going to be a lower scoring game. I said, no, it's not. I mean, LA puts up 30 points a game. And it doesn't matter where they play, they put up 30 points a game. The Bears can easily put up 20, 25. It just depends on, in my opinion, the key is the defense. Looking at defensive rankings, I mean, it's the Rams are 19th in the league in pass yards against, 12th in rush yards against, and they're 10th in points allowed. But if you look at the Bears side, of things, the Bears are 22nd in the league in pass yards against, 27th in rush yards against, and 23rd in points allowed. So basically, you see a glaring thing right there where you're going a higher powered offense against a weaker defense. Now, granted, yes, could the weather screw things up? Could Stafford's finger be affected in this game because of the cold? Absolutely. But just like the Bears, I think both run games have to get established in this game. And if you're able to stop the run in this game and force the quarterbacks to play quarterback, this is what's going to make it really interesting. But I do think third down and fourth down conversions in this game is going to be key because I think kicking is going to be literally impossible.
So I think if anything, we need that one little section, in Billy Madison, after he's actually just explained something, the guy says, okay, thank you for that absolutely ridiculous, we're all dumber for that type of, yeah. So, no, well, actually, you do make a couple of good points, and one of the interesting things about rankings are basically out the window and in the playoffs because everybody has their own little motivations. But you have a very interesting little scenario right here where you have a very opportunistic Bears defense that, if by chance they have that, they're always punching at that ball. So, with the cold hands and, numb fingers and stuff like that, there is a strong possibility they might be able to pick up one or two, fumbles and things like that. With that being said, are they going to be able to actually score on those turnovers? Even if you have that opportunity for 3 points, is 3 points going to be enough? Possibly, yes. Just simply because you have the cold weather. It's going to get even colder. You've got that wind that's going to start whipping around and start circulating and circling around the stadium. And so now you have very similar, if you've seen some of the old footage of the guy trying for the field goal, and it literally goes 90 degrees that way, then that's going to be the type of weather you're going to have this evening. So,
but here's my thing. I get what you're saying, but let's look at. Let's even go back to last week against the Packers. You guys let up 21 points in the first half. When are you guys going to start fast and actually make it to where the team coming into your stadium actually now has to be worried because of the fact that, hey, the Bears just started quick. The Bears are up 7-0. Hey, the Bears are up 10-0.
So the only opportunity that we actually had in order to be able to show any sort of like an offensive prowess was in San Francisco, and it came down to that last second, coulda, woulda, shoulda type of deal, to where, you didn't really have a whole lot of punting and a whole lot of kicking and stuff like that because everybody was scoring every other play, it seemed like. So I think that's certainly one of those things, but I don't know if it's necessarily like a Bears thing. It would be wonderful. I would love to see another blowout like San Francisco, Seattle kind of a thing, where the Bears are up by 40 points. I would love to see that. But with that being said, you don't necessarily get that sense that they're looking for that type of an output. You want to be able to control the ball on the line of scrimmage, to be able to actually run, again, with two players with 200 yards rushing. You have that, again, another opportunistic position to be in where you're actually doing, third and short. You throw it to Lillum, you throw it to Komet, you throw it to, whatever the case is, Manungai, whoever, to where you're just moving that ball, controlling the clock. I think they would be more than happy with winning a game that's like 10-7, 14-10, something like that, and have like 38 minutes of possession. That's what I kind of see with the Bears. However, with that being said, I would love to see a blowout of the Rams. I really would. And if they can actually get to Sam Darnold and actually get him, possibly to sit down for a play or two to kind of heal that finger, is the second quarterback going to come in and be able to have that type of success in that type of weather? Who knows?
Here's some things for you guys to chew on. The ball tonight, like Brian said, that wasn't even intended, Andy. But anyway, the ball will be firm, will be hard, will be slick.
Gross.
Your kicking game is not going to be great, to Brian's point. It's like kicking a brick. However, throwing the ball, catching the ball, that's going to be just as difficult. You got the Bears safety, I believe he leads the league in NFL in interceptions. I think he's got 7 right now on the season. A couple turnovers here, a couple turnovers there. I think the Bears control the pace of this game. If you force turnovers early in this game, you set the pace of the game. Unlike Brian, I don't think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I think we're looking at most 51 total points, which isn't exactly high-scoring for NFL standards. But I think the Bears win by maybe a field goal. I don't see a circumstance where it's going to be an all-out aerial assault. Both teams are capable of doing so. If they figure it out, I'll be the first to eat crow. But I really think it's going to be a game that's controlled with tempo and with your special teams, flipping the field, controlling the clock, and field position. If the Bears can slow this game down, get out to an early lead, force the Rams to play from behind, I think that's your recipe right there. I think the key is controlling the pace of the game.
No, absolutely. And that's what we're saying. You control the line of scrimmage, you control the time that you have the possession, and then when you do get close enough, you score your points. And conversely, you're doing a 3-and-out kind of a thing. Now, one of the things that the Bears have actually just drives me absolutely insane is the fact that they always leave that inside the inside of the field wide open for large chunk plays, and that absolutely drives me insane. It wasn't until the second half of the Green Bay game is when they locked everything down and stuff like that, and that's fine. But I think if they want to be able to do that, you really need to get that quarterback pressure in order to be able to kind of sort of allow for the old happy feet. Because you remember in Detroit, Stafford, every time he got hit, he was going to get hit. I don't know if he just eat some of these Cheerios or something like that, but man, they were looking to lay this guy out for an extended period. And I can see that. If the Bears have the opportunity to give him the old happy feet, he's going to be protecting that finger. It's the little incidentals that that you're trying to be able to kind of get. So,
not that I advocate for this, but if you're a Bears defensive player and you have the opportunity for a shot on Stafford, whether it be a late hit, whether it be unnecessary roughness, what have you, do you take it?
No, absolutely not. Only because you could conceivably put your team in a very, very detrimental position by allowing for those 15 yards and allowing for the possibility for a kick or maybe a first and goal at the 5 or 1 or something like that. Now, that's not to say that being a football guy, if you happen to be giving him some happy feet, you're not chopping at the ball. Oops, your finger, that kind of thing.
That echo whistle just starts to get a little deeper and longer when the quarterback's injured. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's not as quick of I'm going to pull up, I'm going to stop. If I'm playing defense and I know your quarterback's injured, and if I have the opportunity to make a game-changing play, whether it be illegal, not illegal, in the words of my Uncle Eddie, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. I take that shot. I'm taking a shot.
And that's why you're sitting here with us good-looking guys instead of playing ball on Sunday.
And I'm old, so there's that. Not as crazy as some people on the show, but
I don't know. Again, because of the fact that the NFL is all about a game of inches, that 15 yards could be huge. It could be huge. Okay.
Brian's insulted by our conversation.
God damn it.
So much so.
Hey, easy there, killer.
Dallas Cowboy fans.
We're not working blue now. That's because he's still really from the Jared McFlower re-signing there in Green Bay or whatever his name is. So, with that being said, if you want to be able to actually take those yards, I don't necessarily see that. You're not doing like the Sharks used to do on Sundays with LT and the boys.
If you take Stafford out of that game, Jimmy G's already questionable. He's already not expected to play. So now you're down to what? Who are they playing? Who is your quarterback? If you don't have Matthew Stafford in that game, your entire game plan changes.
That would be the case if, by chance, he were to be, he was stepped wrong and he hurt his knee. He's getting out of the shower and he trips and falls, that kind of a thing.
I'm not doing bounty gate here. I'm not taking up contracts in the locker room. I'm just saying if I'm a player, that echo of the whistle is a little longer for me.
Well, I totally get it. But like I said, if you're chopping at the ball, trying to get the ball out, and you happen to hit his finger, that's one thing. Again, that's kind of a football type of play. It's like, okay, so when you had the Bears that were actually, you remember that one play, of course, where you had DJ Moore coming across the middle and he got smacked from behind. That's not necessarily a legal play. It's a football play. It's one of those things. Now, if you're actually specifically going to even after the fact, that kind of brings into account the Packers player during the playoffs or whatever in 86, 87, when you jazzed up McMahon's shoulder. When you jazzed up his shoulder. It's one of those things. I don't hear you. All I see is you doing this and then laughing. I don't.
Yeah, they should call you plunger. You kept bringing up old shit.
That's weird because so's your face. 2002, we won the Super Bowl. We had a winning record then. No, I don't think so.
There's another one. Keep going to the next one.
I'm talking about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Quack,
quack.
Defense of all time. Got it. Well,
Because that
anyway,
was the last time you guys had an actual winning record above 500, which is wow.
Wow. Peyote's heavy today. So,
I wish.
Brian, are you still with us, Brian?
What's that?
You still with us?
Yes, I'm still here. I'm just trying to figure out why the camera's not working again.
No, the show's never looked
Because it's got good taste.
So, let me ask you this. What is your formula for a Bears win today? Being a Packers fan, I want an unbiased opinion on how the Bears win today.
I think you cannot, against this Rams team, go down, more than 14 points. I mean, I get it. They've won 7 games this year coming back in the fourth quarter. I get all that. Here's the problem. This is not the time to be doing it. If you're gonna keep this, you're gonna want to win this game. You keep it close. You keep it close throughout. I do think you have to take a shot at Matt Stafford. I think you have to prove that he's healthy enough to throw the ball. If you can get him down and out, that's more power to you. In terms of the Chicago Bears, in terms of them, how they play the game, in my personal opinion, they've got to run the ball real good today. Because like we had said, ball slick, throwing the ball might not be the best option, especially with the receivers. Offensive line's got to keep Caleb safe against. This is a much better defensive front that they're playing than they did last week. Keep Caleb upright, make good situational decisions. Caleb, do not make the stupid throw. You threw 2 picks last week. One was on him. One was just perfect play. And then I think Loveland's going to be the key again for this offense. If you are going to throw the ball, get it to your safety net. Get it to Loveland. He has proven since basically week 7, week 8 this year that he is a much better tight end than everybody was making him out to be earlier in the year. Use him, because that's what really opened up the game last week against the Packers was his play. And then once the defense is finally starting to realize, hey, we got a key on Loveland, well, that opened up DJ Moore for the big play. And then because of that big play, if you get a chance to hit on that big play, you better hit on that big play, because there may not be very many opportunities in this game to hit a big play. Defensively for the Bears, stay opportunistic. If you've got a shot on Stafford, take it. Safeties and corners. That ball's slick. If it gets into a pass catcher's hands, obviously tackle, but do what Andy said. The peanut punch has been around for a long time. Start taking shots. I think it all boils down to the Bears have to start quicker than normal. They cannot get behind by more than 14. I don't think this is going to be the type of game where they can be world beaters in the second half. But then again, I felt decently comfortable last week being up 21-3 that late in the third quarter, and look what happened. These guys have a knack to just play. I think Ben Johnson's done a hell of a job. Dennis Allen's done a hell of a job with what he's worked with. They do make good in-game changes and stuff like that. I think this game is very close. I don't think anybody's going to run away with the game, and I will be shocked if it is anything like what happened last night. I do see both teams scoring in the neighborhood of 25 to 30 points, and I think this is going to be a 3 or 4 point ball game. Who do I have the edge to? I give the Bears an edge just because home field and negative 10 degrees wind chill.
Copy that. Andy, let's hear your bias review here. What do you see coming?
Much the same, and much as we've been kind of talking about the whole time. If you have that opportunity to be able to control the line of scrimmage, that's probably going to be 70% of your battle right there. That of course brings in your run, that brings in your pass, that kind of thing. You're protecting your quarterback. All the other things is kind of like an incidental kind of a deal. I think the key really, and especially for the Bears, going to be their offensive line, because it's a little bit jumbled up right now. If you can actually control that line of scrimmage in any way, shape, or form, even keeping their defense out for an extended period, I think as soon as you get into like the midway through the third quarter and in the fourth quarter, they're going to be a little bit more gassed. And then, of course, you're going to have that opportunity to be able to get a couple of good plays, a couple of big plays, which should hopefully open up the run a little bit, and maybe they can score at least one, possibly two touchdowns just on that alone. Possibly. So control the line of scrimmage, keep our quarterback up, control the line of scrimmage, get their quarterback down. And I think the Bears have a good opportunity to win by, I'm thinking it's at least a full touchdown.
Wow, that's a lot higher than I was going to go.
Yeah,
I'll close this little bit out here. The player I think the Bears have to really worry about this week isn't Jared Verse. Jared Verse is a game wrecker, but I think you can keep him in check. You don't have to stop him on the pass rush as much. He's good against run, but he's not great against the run. He's a great pass rushing defensive lineman. However, I think with the way the game's going to fall out and roll out, you got to worry about Brendan Fisk. He's a nuisance. He's an not unsung hero because he's getting a lot of praise now, but a lot of teams don't look at him as the game changer, as the impact player that he could be. He shuts that run down. He controls that offensive line or defensive line for the Rams. It's going to be hard to run on. So I think the Bears need to, like you said, win up front. I think the person you got to watch is Brendan Fisk. Anyway, I put my article out there. I think the Bears pull this out with a distinct home field advantage, 27-24. Players to watch on defense for the Bears is going to be Montez Sweat and Kevin Byard, however you say his last name, the safety for the Bears. But Andy, clock is ticking. Do you have any closing thoughts? I think Brian is having technical difficulties, so.
Yeah, go Bears. Bear down. Good, better, best.
That was well educated, well thought out. I appreciate the.
You have no idea.
What?
Believe me, if anybody has no idea, it's you.
well articulated closing thoughts from you, Andy. We always appreciate it. But honestly, good luck today. We'll close it like we always do. I'd like to thank our wives and families for allowing us to come on this little platform 1 hour every Sunday and be complete and total idiots. We'll see you next week for the championship edition of the Krewe NFC Roundtable.
Bear down, Chicago Bears. Let's go, Bears.